Hi everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards, and today I'm doing a profile of the 1979-80 Topps and OPC cards. I've selected 18 for this video, and it's a mixture of both Topps and OPC. And I'll do a little closer review of these cards and talk more about them in a minute here, but I thought I would just do an overview of the 18 cards that I selected. The top set from that year had 264 cards, and OPC had 396. Which was typical during that time that OPC would have the larger issues. Of course, hockey's more popular in Canada, and they decided to go with a larger set that was reflective more of the players of that day. Generally, the photography is the same between both in this set, but there are a few little differences on some of the cards, and I'll point a couple of them out in the video. But this is one of my favorite sets of the 70s. I like the 71 best, but the 79 would come in second just because it is a different looking design. So now I'm just going to do a little bit of a closer up view. So the first three cards we have here are the Wayne Gretzky, Brad Park, and Borja Selming cards. And I'm just going to use these three to kind of just do an overall view of the cards here. You can see the player photos are either posed as we look at these or game action shots, and these three of course are game action shots, and they're surrounded, as I said, by this beautiful blue border around it. And it was the first set with a colored border since the 73 Topps OPC set, and would not be another issue with a colored border until 89 Topps OPC. And then they had a team logo that appeared in the bottom right there that you can see, which is surrounded by a solid colored banner that runs up the side of the card and opens up here above the photo. And then within that photo, you can see inside there's the team name, and then above it is the player's name and a position. Now the back of the card, this is a Topps back here. You can see this really nice looking skate here, and in the upper right, but outside the skate, you can see a cartoon about the player. And then they have the card number in the upper left, and the player's stats appear in the top area above the skate. And then they have a shortened year life statistic line that appears in the middle, followed by a short sentence. Now, for the OPC, it has the English and the French. So this is a Topps version on the Gretzky. And then if we flip this over, you can see that the OPC uses a lighter card stock. And then as well as they would have the English and the French on the back of the card here, just talking about the players, so you can see the differentiation in the languages there. Now, the Gretzky Rookie, that's one card that I did go a little lower grade than I normally would for sets from the 70s, and that was a lot of it was budget dependent, of course, but I really did try to focus on an example that was very blue around the borders, and I gave up centering a touch, you can see from the top to bottom, but I think this Gretzky card presents beautifully. You can just see it there. The color on this card is just fantastic, I think, and it's got a clear registration on it. I don't overly talk about grades, but I thought for purchases like the Gretzky, it would probably be a good idea just to tell you my logic behind what I did. And for certain issues, I will sacrifice the centering some to get color. And I really wanted a nice color on this card. And I just was where I wanted to be with my budget on this one. And I just love that Gretzky example. Now, that year, the Oilers were one of 4 WHA teams from the World Hockey Association that were absorbed by the NHL after the league disbanded. And the other 3 teams were the Quebec Nordiques, the Winnipeg Jets, and the New England Whalers, which later became the Hartford Whalers, after the other New England team, the Boston Bruins, complained. And Gretzky was also entering really a higher scoring era in the NHL, which really suited his offensive genius perfectly. There were 800-plus point, and that means goals and assists, players in the NHL in 1979, including Gretzky. So 8 players had 100 points totaling their goals and assists that year. In the 1980s and the early 1990s, the number of 100-point players just exploded in the NHL. For example, in 1984, there were 16 100-point players, and it peaked in 1992 with 21 100-point players, which is an NHL record. Now, in today's NHL, you may be lucky to see 1 to 3 100-point players a year. So it tells you that when Gretzky was played, the game was a lot different. Goaltending was said not to be as good. Defenses weren't quite as good at that time. It's much more systems employed today, and it's just a different game of hockey now than it was back in the 1980s. And in 1979, Gretzky tied for the league lead with 137 points with Marcel Dionne, and he also scored 51 goals, and he won his first of 9 Hart trophies for league MVP. And here next to him is an OPC Brad Park, and again, Borja Selming. The next 3 cards you see here are Denis Potvin, Tony Esposito, and Brian Trottier. And Brian Trottier, he helped lead the Islanders that year to their first of 4 straight Stanley Cups, defeating the Philadelphia Flyers 4-2. And they also ended the Canadian streak of 4 straight Stanley Cups. He was 6th in the NHL with 104 points. He scored 42 goals. Now, Trottier won the Conn Smythe Trophy as the playoff MVP as well that year, and he really was regarded as one of the greatest all-around players in the 1980s. He was compared to Gordy Howe by some because of his offensive and defensive skills, and he centered the Trio Grande line with fellow Hall of Famers Mike Bosse, who you'll see later in this profile, and Clark Gillies. Now here you see Bobby Clark, Ken Dryden, and Lanny McDonald. Now Bobby Clark was the Flyers' best player throughout most of his career. In the 79-80 season, the Flyers did something that was remarkable. They went nearly 3 months without a loss. It started with a 4-3 win over Toronto on October 14, 1979, and ended with a 4-2 win over Buffalo on January 6, 1980, earning a 35-game record of 25, 0, and 10 ties. This stands as the longest undefeated streak in North American professional sports history. And next to him is the Ken Dryden card. This is his last issue. He was already retired when this card came out, and actually the OPC card states on it that he's now retired in black lettering. I think it's like somewhere right in there. It's written on the card, which I think is pretty cool. As you can see, Dryden retired as a first-team All-Star. And then next to him again is Lanny McDonald. Here you have Stan Mikita, Marcel Dionne, and Gordy Howe. And this is Stan Mikita's last card as well. He's wearing a helmet, and what's interesting is the NHL made the helmet mandatory in 1979, and players in the league prior to 79 season did not have to wear one. 70% of the league already was wearing one, though, at the time, so it really wasn't that big of a conversion. And then next to him you see Marcel Dionne, who I mentioned earlier, tied with Wayne Gretzky for the points lead. But he actually won the Art Ross Trophy as the highest point getter that year because he had 53 goals and Gretzky had 51, so that was considered the tiebreaker. And then next to him, of course, is the legendary Gordy Howe. This is his last playing days card, and here he is with the Hartford Whalers. Just a nice game action shot, and it looks like they're playing the Oilers on the card because you can see behind him the Oilers uniform. Here we have Gilbert Perreault, Bobby Hull, and Guy Lafleur. Now, Bobby Hull, this is also his last card, and the OPC card had the same picture, but on the top, instead of Chicago Blackhawks and with the logo of the Blackhawks, it had the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the funny thing is, he didn't play for the Blackhawks this year, and he didn't play for them the year before either. When the NHL and WHA merged after the 1978 season, Hull's rights automatically reverted back to Chicago in June of '79. Chicago had zero interest in bringing back Hull, likely due to ill feelings about him leaving Chicago to go to the WHA back in 1972. So they left him exposed in the expansion draft, and he was then immediately reclaimed by the Winnipeg Jets. And then later on that season, he was traded from the Jets to the Whalers, where he played with his idol Gordy Howe. He scored 7 points in 9 games with the Whalers and then retired at the end of the season. He did try to make a brief comeback with the Rangers, I believe, in 1981 as well. But this is his last playing days card. And then next to him, you have Guy Lafleur, who was 3rd in the league in scoring that year with 50 goals and 75 assists for 125 points. The last 3 cards I'm going to show today are Mike Bosse, Phil Esposito, and Billy Smith. And Mike Bosse here is shown as a second-team All-Star. He scored 51 goals in the 79-80 season, and again helped the Islanders win the Stanley Cup that year. And then next to him is Phil Esposito with the New York Rangers. Really love the colors on this card with the blue jersey there and the red pants that he has on, how it matches the border of the card, and then also the New York Rangers up top. Just a real sharp-looking card. And you can say the same thing as well with the Bosse and the Billy Smith next to him. So just a real colorful trio of players right here. So what's really interesting, too, about the 79-80 season is there was 21 teams in the NHL after the merger, and 16 of those teams made the playoffs, so only 5 teams missed. And then they would rank them 1 to 16. So they, even though they had conferences then and divisions, they ranked them 1 to 16. So 1 would play team number 16, 2, 15, et cetera, until they got to the Stanley Cup Finals. So that's why you saw the Flyers play against the Islanders, even though they were in the same conference. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to coming out again with another video this week. As I said, I'm on vacation, so I'll have a little bit of extra time to make another video and do the research needed. Everybody have a great day.